Hello and welcome to Minter Dialogue, episode number 504. My name is Minter Dial and I'm your host for this podcast, a proud member of the Evergreen Podcast Network. For more information or to check out other shows on this wonderful network, please go and visit evergreenpodcast.com. So this week's interview is with Marianne Hartley. Marianne's a brand consultant and designer who loves to create irresistible brands through her consultancy, Hartley Soul. Having worked on such projects and brands as the Queens Diamond Jubilee Pageant, Intercontinental Hotels, Toyota and Bacardi to mention a few, Marianne is a seasoned brand expert. In this conversation with Marianne, we discuss the challenges of building a powerful brand, her process for helping brands find and expand their image, as well as some of the great insights from her new book, Align and Shine, Gain an Unshakable Foundation to Build Your Legacy Brand. You'll find all the show notes on minterdial.com. And please, if you have a little moment, go and drop in a rating and review, and don't forget to subscribe to catch all the future episodes. Now for the show. Marianne Hartley, how lovely to have you on my show. You and I share some common languages other than English, and you're a brand consultant, so therefore another thing we share in common, passion for brand. You're also a designer, and the name of your company is Hartley Soul, which of course is a lovely combination, and you're the author of a recently published book, Align and Shine. Great to have you on my show. Marianne, in your words, how would you like to describe who is Marianne?
Oh, Minter, firstly, thank you for inviting me on your podcast. It's a joy to be here with you. And the way I describe myself is a brand designer, but I've also got a real interest in the mind, body, spirit. And so when I launched Hartley Soul, it was really to bring energy healing and design together to create brands that connect to the heart.
Tell us a little bit about your background in branding itself.
So my journey started some years ago when I first studied in Switzerland. I grew up in Switzerland, but I've got a dual nationality. So I have roots in the UK and roots in Switzerland. And I studied graphic design in La Chaux-de-Fonds, where Le Corbusier was also one of the students some years before me. And I then arrived in London in '94 with my portfolio under my arm and a list of designer dresses I wanted to work with. And I got to work in some medium-sized companies that had some big clients like Toyota and Intercontinental Hotels and Royal & Sun Alliance and Accenture, before it was called Accenture. Anderson Consulting. So I had an in-depth immersion in branding and brand hierarchy and brand structure. And while I loved that aspect and creating successful and succinct brands, I also had a real interest in the sort of invisible part, the energy part of things, because we sometimes come across a design that either speaks to us or not at all. And I was really curious about what that is. And in brands as well, there's brands we're attracted to and brands we're not. And what is that about? So that's been one of my inquiries.
Yeah, there's some mysticism. I mean, marketing in general is rather not a poo-poo term, but something that many people are think with less confidence or not trusting of marketers in general. And branding itself is definitely a almost mystical kind of concept for so many people who aren't really in branding. Marianne, over your career, how would you say that branding has changed, what with the new technologies and maybe the new philosophies and mindsets of people?
I think it keeps changing and it keeps evolving, but there are some constants. So when you look at brands that have been around and like luxury brands that have been around for a long time, say Rolls-Royce, their core qualities don't really change over time, but obviously they adapt to the changing market. But what they truly stand for at the heart, this quality remains. And then, I mean, the landscape has totally changed. Also, when I studied, it was before websites. It was before we were all on computers. So, I still experience the sort of typesetting aspect of design and creating a layout by cutting out type. So a real sort of hands-on approach. So it's changed dramatically. It's, on one hand, it's unrecognizable. And now we're going into a new era, which is will have a huge impact on all our lives and all our businesses with AI. And I don't yet know enough about this to talk too much about that part. But what I do know is that the qualities, the values, and what a brand stands for inherently, these are constants that will remain.
And in your experience, to what extent do you feel like the brands we consume or purchase in society are more or less important? Is there a change in the way we perceive the importance of brand?
I think we can go about not being aware of brands at all, because there's some designs we are used to seeing and we don't even question it anymore. But I see and I feel there's a real shift in people becoming more picky and more aware and more conscious in how they consume different brands and who they buy things from, because they're interested in what the brand stands for and the impact the brand has on their people, also on the planet. So there's much more and more awareness around that.
Yeah, and something that I think within that is much newer as well is the relationship between user experience, the design of the product, and the appreciation of the brand within it. And I suppose Apple is sort of the flagship type of design is my brand, or design is very much a part of my brand. And for you, since you're so interested in, obviously a designer, I was wondering to what extent your background in the pre-internet is either a positive or a handicap in terms of designing, and to what extent and how does it become a positive to know that you know how to do typesetting and the original offset printing and so on?
I think it can be both, and it depends from which perspective we look at it. So I think the positive is understanding the journey that design and brands have gone through, and that creates grounding and a depth of understanding. The drawback could be that is not moving fast enough and adapting fast enough. But this is where every business and also every brand designer needs to be adaptable and change with the times. So I personally see it as a positive, because I've always been interested in history and origins of things. So with this as well, it's fascinating to see the journey that the type creations have gone through, how they were created in the past, how they were hand drawn before. Now, of course, we can create and design fonts online with a computer, but they were literally hand painted to start with and handcrafted. And I find that that aspect still really beautiful. And of course, nowadays, you don't want to spend your days painting a type, but knowing how everything has come about, I think adds richness and depth to the craft and to this beautiful world, this business.
I see within what you're saying a kind of a flashback nostalgia that we see in society with regard to vinyl LPs, the fountain pen, slow time. And I do feel like maybe it's a counter movement, but there is a genuine need for deeper humanity. One of the quotes I liked in your book, which I stripped out, which is, the challenge of good branding is not only to have clarity and convey a single message, but also to invoke the depth of connection and nuances like a work of art does. And if you think of the art history or artists today, the one who doesn't have any knowledge of the past and thinks that putting a toilet roll on the floor is art, stripped of any history and context, it feels lightweight. But if you know the route to which we got to that toilet roll in the middle of a floor or whatever it is, then that gives it much more profundity. And I'm sure that that must be something that resonates with you.
Yeah, and each design and each item or each work of art depends on context. So just seeing, you can approach a brand or a design just by looking at it and either liking it or not liking it, and that remains can remain superficial. And on the other hand, when it's created for a specific context and it stands for specific values, then it becomes it has more weight and more gravitas. So on the other hand, it's all about creating brands that instantly connect to your target audience. So I always get my clients to really go deep into the essence of what they stand for, who they're here to serve, so that what they are here to offer really resonates with the people that they're here to serve and help.
It's like we have this need in life. We look at books, read them by the cover, but actually it's about reading the book. So you have to have instant attachment, immediate appeal, click here, you're going to like me. But then you need behind that depth and nuance. And it makes me think of when I was at university studying literature, the critical analysis that would look at the life of the author as part of the study of the work brings another type of depth to the work and obviously the context within which the book was written. And similarly in branding, I'm just sort of riffing here. You put us an ad, 30-second spot, buy this great new thing. And yet today, for me, branding is so much more about the relationships that one has within the company first, and then amongst the suppliers and clients with the people working within the organization. So that becomes, in my parallel idea, the author. And then you have the 30-second spot being actually the painting or the call to action, the cover of the book.
Yeah, and it's like a company that has a great employee culture stands for something bigger than just creating profit. So I believe when there's a big vision behind the company, that really drives every aspect of the company. So the founder, the CEO, the employee, the management, to the receptionist, everyone knows what the company stands for and is in their own way connected to the vision. It creates like a bigger entity. So the company stands for something greater than just a means to an end. It's there to transform either an area of life, an area of business, and really making the world better for people or for consumers, or making a product easier to use. So there's always a solving of a problem. And when the vision is greater than just our immediate needs of survival, everyone gains energy, and everyone can participate in their own way and feel like they're part of something bigger. So that's within the organization and also outside, so consumers and employees.
So it feels like at some level that alignment to this bigger purpose is actually closely linked to the value add, which is a different way of looking at it. I like that. One of the things you write about, and I subscribe to in a massive way for having lived about it and talked about it in my last book, is this notion of inside out. So I love that piece within your book. You say, create your brand from the inside out, not the outside in. And you think of that approach inside out as being more expansive, nourishing, and uplifting, to use your words. Here's the thing. When you are a large organization that's existing or a total startup, in both cases, creating that purpose or making it live throughout the organization is, for very different reasons, very difficult to happen. And I was thinking, let's just start off by looking at the startup, the entrepreneur. I've got a problem. I'm solving it. Here's my fix. It's great UX, blah, 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 blah. You've been in existence for 6 months. When does one actually really purposefully come around making that brand happen, making that purpose happen? I mean, because you can start talking about purpose and you haven't even made a penny. It feels like a little bit lightweight when you're an investor saying, all right, enough of the purpose thing. You need to make money.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's starting a business without a vision is a bit like setting off in the woods. At the same time, you need to explore your product and test it out first to see whether your idea is just a great idea in your mind, or whether it really is there to solve a problem and whether there really is a need for it. So to answer your question directly, I would test out a product first, sort of put out the idea, see what traction it gets. And when there is momentum, then at that point go, oh, well, and you also learn things about you and the product and your business during that time. So whether it's 6 months or a year, it gives you a flavor of the market. It gives you a flavor of the things you really enjoy doing, the things you don't love doing at all, where you will need to get support or outsource. And through these experiences, you also gain an understanding of what drives you and what has the most satisfaction in it for you, and also what brings the most satisfaction to your customer. So I would focus on the big vision once you've had a little bit of exploration. So set out with an idea or a drive in the very beginning, test it out, and then confirm that vision once you've got some traction.
I see two flaws in the marketplace often happening. The first one is, well, I've got a great brand name, I've got the URL, and my brand is this, and I haven't launched the product yet, but I get really super focused on it. And this is the typeface I want to use for the brand, and this is the color coordination ambiance I want to have. And we go about almost creating the ad before the product is sold. The second one, which probably is more common, is not to think about brand. And despite having worked for 4 or 5 years, not having sort of coalesced around what is our experience, what is our culture, and how do we really want to fasten, is that's your French word, our brand for the future, so that as the founder, I can step away and it continues to live on. And I suppose that's where people like you come into play.
Yeah. What I've noticed is the founder really holds, if the founder doesn't hold the vision, then it's like no one has a compass. So the founder needs to be really clear on the vision. And we've seen this with Apple and Steve Jobs. As long as he was there with the vision, now Apple is still a great product, but we'll see where it goes and how it evolves. But with a company that grows very quickly without a clear direction, there's there's several challenges that come about at that point, because it is like setting off driving without knowing, without compass or without sat nav, and really probably getting lost along the way. So focusing on the bigger vision and the greater outcome is fundamental to the success of a brand, and also to the well-being of employees, because if you don't know which direction you're going in, you can quickly burn out.
Hey, small business leaders, are you looking for an easier way to onboard and manage remote employees? Or are you feeling you're just doing it all at your company? JustWorks makes it easier for you to start, run, and grow a business. So let me tell you how JustWorks can help your business. I'll give you an example. For anyone who follows my work, you'll know how deeply I believe that great people are at the heart of every business. And JustWorks can help you attract and retain top talent in a competitive market, because their platform gives you access to rich benefits, usually only available to large corporations, plus a range of health, fitness, and financial perks, because you and your team deserve them too. And on top of that, the way people are working is changing, and you need human resources tools that can keep up. Whether your team is local, remote, or distributed, JustWorks helps you comply with state payroll tax requirements, keep up with their state labor laws, and access health insurance plans in any state. They also provide proactive support for federal, state, and local employment-related compliance needs. JustWorks makes it simple to hire and manage remote employees across all 50 states of the United States. It's a cloud-based platform that enables managers and employees alike to quickly and securely access benefits, payroll, and other HR functionality from anywhere, anytime. They provide an intuitive, self-service user experience that makes admin easier for the whole team. And they provide help when you need it, with 24/7 expert support for you and your employees. By the way, JustWorks believes it's your right as a customer to have a phenomenal service experience every time. Also provides access to certified HR consultants who can provide tailored guidance and best practices around managing your people, with transparent pricing with no hidden costs, so you always know exactly what you're paying for. You can run your business, therefore, with confidence with JustWorks. So take a look at JustWorks transparent pricing by visiting justworks.com/pricing. That's justworks.com/pricing for details. Well, I very much agree with you on that. And something I talk about, looking at the governance of corporations and the presence of the founder and or founding family who continue to have at least influence, if not ownership, which creates a very different dynamic than the big corporates. So coming back to that problem, the big corporate who's got a well-known brand name, it's a name everybody knows, but there's no soul in it. There's no heart or soul in it. Then that becomes a different type of challenge. And I'm assuming you've done work with, as you mentioned, like Toyota and folks like that before. How does one go about articulating that? If I'm working in a large company and I feel that the company doesn't have heart and soul, doesn't have a living brand, or it has a brand, well known, but it doesn't feel like it's very humane. What do you need to do?
Again, it comes back to the values. Every company, even if it's a multinational, has core values at the heart of it. And if they have been diluted or sort of lost along the way, it's important to rekindle them and reignite them, because again, that will be for the benefit of everyone within the company, but the products that come out of the company. And I believe more and more, when there isn't a connection with the values and the higher outcome, consumers aren't so interested in just consuming. Consumers are becoming very savvy as well, and they also want to be part of something that is meaningful and that has value for them, and it's not just being used as a product. So consumers not being used as a product. So reinstating the values within the companies, and we see big brands acquiring smaller brands that have the heart and soul within it. For example, Pucker Teas being acquired, and Innocent Drinks, and brands that really set out with a very strong purpose, and a lot of passion for what they were doing, and a real niche problem they were solving. So I guess for large corporates, acquiring smaller brands is one way, but I believe at the heart of the large corporates is also really reconnecting and reinstating what their biggest purpose is.
Well, I worked in a large cosmetic company that saw fit to buy lots of little niche brands because unable to have that passion truly expressed through the incumbent brands. And then what inevitably happens is kind of you crush the individuality of those smaller brands through the systems and synergies, and then the cross-fertilization of people, which renders it much less specific than it was in the first place. So a tough thing to do. One of the things I loved, one other concept you had in your book, Align and Shine. You write, contribution is the antidote to disconnection. It fills this void that we have. So talking about connection. So give us a little bit more surround sound around this word. I love the word contribution. What do you mean by contribution, and how can brands or people in companies consider contribution?
I love that you're asking this question. So I feel, or I've noticed, one of our main challenges is that we have this sense of feeling disconnected, often disconnected from ourselves, disconnected from each other. And we've gone through an experience that has literally disconnected us all for some time. And this, we can also, the way advertising has worked in the past can also create this sense of disconnection within ourselves. So, buy this product and then you will feel good. But when you buy the product, it's actually, the product cannot fulfill that sense of void that at times we can all feel. So contributing is a way of, is expansive, and it's an expansive energy that makes not only you feel good, but everyone who is involved with that product or with that concept. I'm not sure I answered your question so well.
No, you are. I mean, obviously, for me, this notion of contribution is contributing back to a bigger piece than just the product that we're creating. So it's back to something you said before, a bigger purpose.
Yes.
Within which lies the contribution.
Yes. And it's also, there are brands that are more extracting, and there are brands that are expanding because they're giving back. And I believe we are all connected, and we all depend on each other, and whatever we can do to keep this cycle going of taking but giving again, then that will have a greater impact on the well-being of everyone.
Touche. I think the well-being, as you say, I'm an energy healer and a brand designer. On this notion, you talk quite a lot about specifics of design. And I read one passage and I went, uh-oh, I'm glad I didn't write that. And here's why. And of course, I understand it and I believe it, but it's not something I would have felt comfortable writing in today's world. Circular is more feminine, square is more masculine. I could see some people running off with that and saying, well, that's not true. You're being stereotyping and such and such. Yet, do I fundamentally absolutely agree with you? How do you react to that?
Yes, I know can be a very sensitive subject. When I talk about feminine, it doesn't mean necessarily man or woman. Or rather, when I talk about feminine, it's not related to women only. So there are feminine and masculine energies within
Good
women and
In
men.
Jungian fashion, right?
Yes, and we nature is made up of both. So there are these differences, and there's not one that is positive and the other one is negative. We need both in their full expression to have a well-functioning world. And what has happened at times, we can see that it has gone too far in one direction, and then things get out of balance, relationships get out of balance, businesses get out of balance, and it's about creating a strong sense of both and the qualities of both the masculine and the feminine, because they're meant to work together, not against each other. And shapes have something more feminine and more masculine.
Of course they do. And we should be allowed to say this. It's just a reflection of the state of the world that I would have that as an uh-oh kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks back to an original question I talked about or asked with you about why is branding more important? And you use the word void and an imbalance. I feel today there is such a sort of a craziness and chaos that in this void, the role of brand, whether as employee or consumer, is filling a void if well done, if it's a nice work of art.
When you create a brand from the inside out, that is an expression of what you stand for, the reason you're doing what you're doing. It has an energy about it that is really beautiful. And obviously the design needs to be beautiful as well. I've always found that when I'm in a museum or a gallery and looking at my favorite work of art, I really get a sense of connection, but also of nourishment. And it's always been my real vision or my biggest dream to create brands that are nourishing to everyone who looks at them, and people who consume them, and people who are working within that company and that brand. So it has a giving energy, and I believe we're at a point where we need this nourishment, and we're all yearning for meaning and for creating a positive impact and making our contribution.
Yeah, this giving mode, contribution. So one of the key concepts in your book, you talk about the 3 stages of evaluating, creating a brand. And so I want to react. The 3 stages are dive, discover, and define. And afterwards, I'd like you to give just a short top line view of what that means. But here's what I reacted to that. For dive, left brain, they discover right brain, and then define is this combination of both right and left brain activities, or let's say more rational and more emotional. And I love that. And I thought of what makes a genius, and it goes back to the artistic world. For some crazy moment, probably after some psychedelic experience, I decided that all geniuses have this combination. They have knowledge and understanding of the core art or the core subject matter, but they also bring to it this flair, this je ne sais quoi, an intuition, a connection with their gut, some heated passion within them that's irrational at the highest degree. That is the combination that allows you to get to genius. Because without the first, which is the foundation, the base, the knowledge of what has come before, the giants on whose shoulders we are being born, then it kind of feels detached, disembodied, and almost lucky. And then the intuition thing, people can have intuition without knowledge, and things can happen, sure. But the real genius is when you, on top of knowing how to write music, you bring your flair into it. So that was how I read that piece, Marianne, delightfully. So first you can react to that, but I also want you to top line for us. What did you mean by the dive, discover, and define?
So when I wrote the book, I realized that I'd been using a structure in an intuitive way, and I wanted to describe the different stages. And really what I noticed is that it's so important to have the rational part, sort of the questions that really are, we know, and it grounds us. But also, if we only focus on that part, there's a huge dimension that's missing. And I feel, and I've noticed that often the intuitive part, or the heart part, if you like, is lacking, because we focus on the thinking and then on logic and on making it work, which is brilliant. We need that. But when we add the intuitive part and the connection to the heart, so it's really about linking the mind and the heart. And by doing that, it becomes a much fuller experience and a much deeper experience also of the brand. So this is why sort of the logical mind is crucial. We need the brand to work. It needs to be successful. It needs to make money, and it needs to have this bigger impact, or this drive that is not logical, that maybe is left field, and that we can only access through connecting with our heart and sort of doing a deep introspection. And I use a process which is like a meditation, and that takes us into the heart, and we get symbols that then inform us of the quality that our logical mind would never allow us to have access to.
Well, what you're saying, Marianne, reminds me of another interview I had not too long ago with the brilliant mind of David Gluckman, who wrote the book "This Shit Won't Sell," in which he talks about.
I've met David.
Oh, you know David.
Yeah,
there you go. Well, and so he's amongst the many people that we have in common. So in your book, you reference my good friend Marty Neumeier,
who's
been
yes,
on my
Marty.
he's been on my show a couple of times,
as
well as Dan Priestley. But David very much believes that A/B testing is the downside of this intuition thing. You need to have one big idea, and you need to feel it in your gut, and you need to believe in it. If you start doing market tests for every color, every brand typeface, what you're going to end up with is the biggest old hodgepodge compromise, useless, not standing out type of brand. So I was wondering to what extent you would resonate with that thought.
Yeah, I do resonate with that. So it's also, in a way, a reverse engineering, sort of going with the intuition, going with the gut idea, and then bringing it, doing the nuts and bolts to make it work. If you do it the other way around, it's not as powerful, but we definitely need both. And
from a pragmatic standpoint, Marianne, my feeling is so many of the bosses with whom we interact, our clients, they are typically left brain wired individuals. They have the big MBA, they have the big brain. They like, there's a French term which is, goes, thèse, synthèse, and antithèse. No, thèse, antithèse, and synthèse. So you have a thesis, then you have the antithesis, and then you have the synthesis of the two. And it's very structured. That's the way they like it. So if you don't deal with them that way, very blue-minded, very rational, logic-minded people, if you don't cater to that component, they'll look at you like voodoo.
Yes, that's very possible.
Right. So good to bring both to the party. Right?
Absolutely. But I do believe and feel that when we only focus on the logic and only do what what the mind tells us, that doesn't go to the highest expression of what the brand or the business or we are here to do.
So I want to finish on one other part of the book that really got me thinking, something I had come across, which is the work that you cite from Dr. David Hawkins, who, and you talk about these energy frequencies and power versus force. And so here is where there are two. So in his analysis that you write about, you show how certain things have very small forces, small energy frequencies, and generally negative in tone. And then you have on the other side the positive ones, and you have a weight. So the one that really got my gander, and I wanted to debate this one with you, Marianne, was 200 for courage. For me, I feel courage is something that's deeply lacking. And in the context within which we are trying to do branding and stand out, I feel like 200 is very lightweight, or a light evaluation of what's needed positively in the market, which along the lines of what David might say, you need to have the courage of your bloody conviction to have this, to believe that this is what the brand should be, and it should be Bailey's, and this is why, and we go with it.
Yeah.
Too much of our society is, well, oh, we want to be nice to everybody. We can't displease anybody. Oh, well, let's test. Let's bring in a big company to justify the reason why we're going to launch it with this name, as opposed to, I'm a founder. This is what I frickin' believe, and this is what we're going to frickin' do. So I wanted to debate this, the 200 ranking for courage.
So because the highest is at 1,000, right?
Right, for enlightenment.
And that's a state of mind, and it's a state of being that is incredibly high energy. So I hear what you're saying about courage. Now, when the brand is led by the highest intention, say I think love is just underneath. Now you've probably got the scale in front of you. So when the brand is driven by the highest intention, courage sort of comes with it. So if you drive with courage alone, there's not as much intensity or not as much energy behind it. And this is why courage is so much lower, if you like, than love, because love goes beyond. Love is for everyone. It's not just about yourself.
I love the way you turned that around for me, Marianne, because I was all mystified and got a little jumpy on it. But that is a brilliant way of reviewing how that works, because I haven't obviously read Hawkins's work, and you have the other ones with joy and peace, which are much more, I would say, expansive, to use your term from before. I feel that in today's world, we do need to have more align and shine. So, Marianne, in your, what would be the best way? Thank you for being on my show. What would be the best way for people to grab your book or get in touch with you, connect, follow what you are up to, your daily writings or musings? What would be the best way?
Well, the best way to connect would be on LinkedIn, Marianne Hartley, and the book is available on Amazon, Align and Shine, and I can share the link in the transcript below later on. And Minter, thank you so much for inviting me to your show. It's been a joy to explore branding with you. And I wish everyone very, very well.
Super. Thank you very much, Marianne. Thanks for having listened to this episode of the Minter Dialogue podcast. If you like the show and would like to support me, please consider a donation on patreon.com/MinterDial. You can also subscribe on your favorite podcast service. And as ever, rating and reviews are the real currency for podcasts. You'll find the show notes with over 2,000 and more blog posts on minterdial.com. Check out my documentary film and 4 books, including my last one, You Lead, how being yourself makes you a better leader. And to finish, here's a song I wrote with Stephanie Singer, A Convinced Man.
Of a stranger tucked around me, precipitating the danger to feel free. Trust is the reason, still I won't toe the line. I sit here passively, hope for your respect, anticipating the thrill of your intellect. Maybe I tell myself there's no use in me lying. I'm a convinced man, building an urge. I'm a convinced man, to live and die submerged. A convinced man, in the arms of a woman. I'm a convinced man, challenge my fate. I'm a convinced man, competition's innate. A convinced man, in the arms of a woman. Despise revenges and struggle with deceit. Live for the challenge so life's not incomplete. What's wrong with challenge? I know soon we all die. I like the feel of a stranger tucked around me, precipitating the danger to feel free. Trust in my reason and let me show you why. I'm a convinced man, practicing my lines. I'm a convinced man, here in these confines. A convinced man, in the arms of a woman. I'm a convinced man, admit to the test. I'm a convinced man, I'm ready for an arrest. I'm a convinced man, in the arms of a woman.
The world's best-known investor and Wall Street expert Warren Buffett once said, "Wall Street is the only place that people ride to in a Rolls-Royce to get advice from those who take the subway." Mr. Buffett's quote is remarkably accurate, but how many people would rather receive advice from him than someone simply guessing? Welcome to Buy, Hold, Sell, your single source for Wall Street knowledge and profitable guidance. Please join me, Todd Schoenberger, and fellow trader Tobin Smith, as well as host Veronica Dudo, for a podcast known to move the needle for investors. Tobin and I are seasoned Wall Street executives with deep investment experience, and we are prepared to share our advice to those who choose to listen. Download Buy, Hold, Sell today on the Evergreen Podcast Network or your favorite podcast channel.